the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Ambassador, appreciate you joining us. I have to first ask you about this fire at Europe's largest nuclear power plant after it was shelled in Ukraine. Aside from the shock that something like this even happened, are there options diplomatically in an event like this? Communication, back channels to Russia, for example?
Well, there have to be direct channels to Russia, Don. Ukrainians just today had some of those direct channels in their conversations that talked about humanitarian corridors. So they made some progress. The Ukrainians and the Russians got together on the Belarusian-Ukrainian border. This would have been a perfect topic, and it is a perfect topic. There's no reason why it can't be taken up. This is the kind of emergency. This is the kind of a disaster in the making that both sides have a lot to agree on how to solve it. The Russians need to pull back. The firefighters need to be able to get it there, and they need to be able to address this fire.
Ambassador, whether it is this nuclear power plant or the huge destruction in several Ukrainian cities where residential areas have been hit, Russian attacks looks totally indiscriminate. Are you worried about this conflict getting completely out of control?
Absolutely. This is indiscriminate. It is killing women, children, and innocent people in cities, downtown cities. Don, we've talked about this before. This is a war crime. These clearly are perpetrated intentionally. These are not accidents. When it's directed at civilians and it's intentional, that's a war crime. And it can be addressed, and that needs to be addressed in these. It's starting with the humanitarian corridors, but the way to get to Mr. Putin is going to have to be direct. And as Nick just reported, the direct route is likely to be Russian people in the streets.
Yeah, I mean the video as you were speaking. I don't know if we could please direct that video. As you were speaking, the video of what's happening in Borianka and the destruction, it is just unbelievable. And Ambassador, for what? For what?
Don, that's exactly right. What is this for? How can he justify it? As we've said, he looked for a justification to be able to answer the question you just asked. For what? He couldn't find one. He couldn't get one. He talks about denazification, and you pointed out the president of Ukraine is Jewish. There is no rationale. He couldn't even get the Ukrainians to give him a rationale. He couldn't provoke them. They were disciplined and didn't fall into the trap. So there is no answer to that question, why? There is no answer. The Russian people will know it. The international community knows it. The people in Europe know it. The Russian people are learning that. And two things. One, when their sons and daughters come back to be buried, they are going to be angry and demanding an answer to the question you just asked. Number two, their quality of life, sad to say, but normal Russians are going to pay for the sins, the decisions of President Putin in their quality of life. When their ruble doesn't buy what it used to buy, and they are not able to maintain what they had before, they will be angry, and they'll go to the streets.
A French government source saying that Putin indicated on a phone call with President Macron that he intends to go all the way and take over all of Ukraine, and basically saying the worst is yet to come. How do you think this crisis ends?
I think this crisis ends in a long grind, a long resistance, a continued resistance. I mean, Ukraine is resisting now. They will continue to resist. Whatever the military outcome of the next week or two or three, the Ukrainians will resist. They will either resist, and the Russians, for whatever reason, because Russians go to the streets, or there's someone within the Kremlin, there's a palace coup, or whatever it is, that could be the resistance succeeding. Or if he is able, if President Putin is able to get to Kyiv, and President Zelensky at the end has to move to the southwestern part of the country or wherever, he will continue to lead this. And that, Don, is what I'm talking about, is the long grind. That's the long resistance that Ukrainians will put up. The Ukrainians will not give in.
You know, in the report that Nick filed just before it ran, just before you were on, it is shocking to see some people can see through the lies, but most of what Russians are watching is really just pure propaganda. Propaganda. Are you worried that could actually fuel support for Putin's war within Russia?
I do, but I also thought Nick's report was insightful. In particular, young people, they are seeing through it. They are experiencing the pain of the economic sanctions already. The young people understand ways to get information, and they don't have to go through the government-controlled TV stations. They understand it, and that will spread. That will spread. You cannot hide this from the Russian people.
Thousands of Russians have been detained for protesting in an effort to control dissent. Two Russian deputies put forth a draft bill that would force Russians into military service in Donbass if they protest the invasion. Is that going to make Russians afraid of speaking out? You said after this that they may take to the streets, they may be demanding answers, but forcing them now, saying they've got to do it, is that going to perhaps change?
That will probably reinforce the backlash that if you tell people, if you protest, we're going to throw you in jail. If you protest, we're going to make you go into the army. This will fuel the anger. This will fuel the dissent. This will fuel the protests. This will fuel opposition leaders taking to this issue. I think this will have a backlash if he tries to do this. They can only oppress so much. When you get millions in the street, you can't have an effect. If you get tens of thousands, if you get a couple hundred here, then you can suppress. Then you can oppress. But when you get hundreds of thousands, when you get millions in the street, you can't stop that.
Yeah. Ambassador Taylor, thank you. I appreciate you joining us.